There is a difference between a big piece of art and a piece of art that feels big. Physical size is a useful tool, but it's not the only one. There are huge manga panels that don't feel that big, and aren't trying to, and there are panels that feel enormous even without needing to be a full 2-page spread. And if there's one manga that's great at conveying scale, it's One Piece. So let's dig into why chapter 1122 feels big and more. Scale is relative. You can't have depth perception in a static 2-dimensional image, so to understand how big something is, we need to be able to compare it to something small. We can do that here because Sunny's silhouette is clear and recognizable. Even Luffy, who's absolutely tiny in this panel, is distinctly in his Nika pose. The panel above emphasizes that they're physically small players in this conflict, and it's framed to hide the Gorosei. The whole sequence above ignores them, to make us think maybe the crew is free. The eye follows the Sunny in a curved path, making us expect to just land in the water without trouble. The tight framing makes it more shocking when we pull back to see we're still in the middle of danger. Contrast with small panels makes big panels stand out more. The eye travels into the panel along the yard of the Giants' ship, then follows the leftward flow to match how all the characters are moving. I like how the composition conveys their situation. They're surrounded by the Gorosei on 3 out of 4 sides, and are framed as though they're inside Jupiter's mouth. There's a way out, but the danger is closing in. There's an empty background in front of them to convey the freedom they're trying to escape into, the freedom that Luffy is currently inside. And the Gorosei are facing left, past Emmett, showing they're now ignoring him, a choice they'll regret. On the next page, we again use small panels to make the large panel feel larger. I particularly like how the huge effect of the Haki contrasts the smallness of a knot unraveling. How something small can trigger something so big. The top left panels are also extremely clever. The eye moving left matches the motion of the Marines falling down, but we also have Luffy in between. His panel being so narrow conveys that this is happening fast, that he's still processing what Emmett just did. But that panel being in between also gives a sense of rhythm to the Marines falling, using closure, which I talked about in my video on chapter 895, to make the motion feel more vivid. The top central shot is framed similarly to the bottom panel, to give a feeling of zooming outward, just as a blast of Conqueror's Haki does. But there's also a clever contrast with the page before. The panel of the Gorosei felt big, but it didn't stretch the full width of the page. Following it with an actual full-width panel conveys that what Emmett did is larger and more powerful than anything they can do. The Haki lines give the panel a radial composition that, as always, conveys power, as well as being the consistent motif of strong Haki. There's a subtle curved composition behind it, with the waves below and the literal shockwave lines blending with the shading on the clouds. It makes it feel like the blast is warping space itself. Much like the panel at the end of chapter 1113, the shot is way larger than the island itself, conveying scale even further. The details on Egghead are a little messy, and that's on purpose. If Egghead was the point of the panel, then it would need more precise details or more contrast to pull the eye toward it. But the point of the panel is the Haki itself, so the Haki lightning stands out with dark contrast, while everything else is less detailed. That continues onto the next page, with the lines also drawing the eye left, which matches the motion of the Marines falling. We match that motion more with how the eye moves down into the next row, just as they fall to the deck. Doll is framed in between to give the feeling that, to the strong, everyone around them is folding left and right. This page uses a slanted layout to convey how it's thrown everyone off balance. Nobody is standing on even footing in this moment, mentally speaking. The panel of the Gorosei at the bottom then transitions us back to focusing on them instead of the Marines. Before, the Gorosei were all framed in an aggressive curve, about to eat the Sunny like Pac-Man. Their positions are the same here, but now they're all aligned with the radial lines emanating from Emmett, showing how his attack is taking control. The transition from a big panel with all of them to small panels of them individually conveys their loss. I'm a fan of Conqueror's Haki being their weakness. I thought it was cool how Luffy had to reach the next level of Haki to keep up with Kaido. Say what you will about Awakening, but it did kind of distract from the importance of a strong will. And I like this being shown visually. But the best visual storytelling in the chapter is Mars just sitting there, waiting, his eyes telling them, "You too?" I hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you want my full thoughts on the paneling of the rest of the chapter, do the Patreon or the membership. Otherwise, like, comment, subscribe, and remember to floss your teeth before brushing.